is a discussion relevant to the charter amendment related to city council's solicitor. Who wants to start that discussion?
Well, I don't mind.
Go ahead, Shay.
Well, I'm on the job now, what, 14, 15 years. How many times has it come up where council needs their own solicitor? It reaches a point where we end up fighting with each other because the solicitor that we have is representing council and administration. There's no company in the world that allows one lawyer working in a company to handle everything that's going on in the company. You know, we talk about it, everybody agrees, yet when it's time to act on it, everybody just keeps quiet or we don't go for it. But I think we've reached a point now where it's important that each department, let's call it a department, that each department, council, and administration should have their own solicitor at all times. Thank you.
Additional comments? Marcia, then Donna.
Well, I think the issue brought up was addressed by a charter question and was voted on by the public. So I think that the question for me isn't so much whether we need one or not or should have one. That's behind us. It's how it's implemented and moving forward.
All right, Marcia, Donna.
Okay, a couple things here. I think Strat's point and Marcia's as well are well made. There should be the mechanism in place, and having happened already, that we have access to our own solicitor. Number two is that I am uncomfortable moving forward until, and this is probably something that needs executive session, I know the status of the outstanding litigation regarding previous, I don't even say previous, it's bad terminology, who had been in that position. So I'm uncomfortable in acting on anything until I understand that, and that's executive session. But I think there's too many question marks here to go forward with a permanent solicitor at this point. That's my feeling. It's nothing against anyone, but I believe we're in the middle of some murky ground here, and let's get all that cleaned up and straightened up before we move forward.
Well, I want to clarify some things. First of all, what we're discussing now is the city council solicitor. And Linda, I know you attached the ordinance that city council originally used to put something on the ballot. Looking for that original ballot wording. I think it's important that we understand what that city referendum meant, what it states, and the fact that it's kind of an advisor for city council. So let's get that wording up here. Do you have that handy, Linda? I have it in email here. I just got to find it. But in the meantime, Lucine, did you have a comment?
I have a comment, but I saw Marcia, and I want to give her the ability to respond. Was it Marcia in response to?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and Jeff clarified what I was going to say. The discussion has nothing to do with our appointment of a solicitor. It has to do with our retaining a solicitor for the council. That's a completely separate issue. So I think we need to work on what's on the agenda. And as far as pulling up the language, I feel it almost, I don't like doing stuff where we just are pulling up language and trying to dice it out. I think what we need to do is have the language looked at by our solicitor, be able to get the recommendation of what steps we need to move forward to be in compliance with the language. Because I think it's more of a legal issue.
Yeah, Marcia, that's really kind of where I was going with it. We have Fred on the call. I believe that he really needs to kind of give the opinion as to our next steps because the referendum, moved forward the ability for council to have and appoint a solicitor. didn't necessarily define the specifics around and as to when or for how long. And so we really need to know and kind of have that guidance as to what does the referendum decree or state, and then what are the next steps that we as council need to take, you know, in response to the referendum. So, you know, at that point, I would say to Fred, you know, how can you advise us now as to, you know, really where our thought process should be, and kind of looking at how to activate this legislation appropriately.
Well, I think that the language is shall, so I think it does have to happen. Doesn't give a time frame, and it also it says that it has to, it uses the term employee, but it doesn't have to be a full-time employee. But I think there's really a lot of questions that council needs to decide with some legal guidance. But I think ultimately, I do think an appointment has to happen. I think there should be an advertisement, but how the city council solicitor is used, the hours or the structure, there's that can be done by ordinance and is something that council has discretion, as long as it's within the confines of the charter amendment.
Yeah, so go ahead, Donna.
Okay, my point here is this, and I understand the murkiness of what I said before, but there was a point to that. The point is here, however this is determined, this will be a council solicitor representing council. The issue to me is, and this is no bearing on an individual, but if we have the city solicitor giving us advice on how on going forward with the solicitor for council, and some kind of, you know, issue comes up hitting council versus administration, and that solicitor has given us advice on moving forward with this position, I think it puts a conflict of interest there. And I think our counsel for this to understand everything that's going on should be an independent person, not anyone sitting in the city solicitor's role at this point as we move forward. Again, I see murkiness. I mean, we all know how litigation has occurred, and the last thing you want is as we go to appoint someone, however that works, full-time consultant, whatever, I think the advice has to come from an independent individual, not from someone who might at some point be on the opposite sides of an issue from a litigation standpoint.
Yeah, this is going to take some navigation, because when I look at the wording of the charter, and we went through this a few weeks ago in a confidential email, and I look at the referendum question, certainly clearly states that city council shall appoint a solicitor who shall be a member of the bar and experienced municipal law, shall serve as a legal advisor to city council, perform legal services for city council. The primary responsible position of the council solicitor is to advise city council on questions of law. City council's solicitor shall have his or own legal secretary, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of questions because the city solicitor is the chief legal advisor for the city. And there's nothing in this referendum that takes that away. So we've got some really
Does
big...
the city solicitor become his boss then, Jeff?
No.
His or her boss?
Let me finish now.
Okay.
There's a
I'm just
series
asking.
of questions that need to be figured out. I'm going to suggest that before we revisit this, that everyone read that referendum and present their questions. I'll present mine. We'll figure out, if the city solicitors certainly can help us answer them. If we feel there's some conflict, we can explore that as well. But I don't think there's any reason for conflict. I just want to make sure that we understand we're not creating two equal city solicitors, okay?
So what is the organizational chart then, Jeff?
We have one city solicitor who is, and the charter defines that individual as the chief legal advisor of the city. Now, this is my interpretation of it. Having an advisory legal counsel for city council, as we need them all the time, whatever, has been defined in this referendum. for someone to believe that we have two city solicitors that are chief legal advisors would set up other problems. So I think I'll stage out some questions and I'll ask you, each of you to read through them, but we just have to be careful as we navigate this, as we go to appoint a solicitor, that we're clear on what we're appointing. And what the hierarchy of the charter still states, if you will. And Fred, we may need your help on that, because there are sections, the pre-existing sections of the charter that define the city solicitor as the chief legal advisor, is going to need to be broken down to make sure everyone is clear what that delineates, meaning it states that this is the voice, the legal voice of the city. Doesn't mean we don't have an advisory voice that we can rely upon to question things. But at the end of the day, the city has liabilities, and the city has to follow a legal direction, if you will. And there has to be a voice that says yay or nay. And so I'm not saying anybody's wrong or right here. I'm just trying to make sure that we're all clear that there's still some delineating here to be done. And I'm going to ask everyone to kind of compile their questions with me as well. I actually had some too. It's not like I got the answers here, but I just see some we have to be real clear on what we're creating, because if we don't, it'll set up even more problems later on. Yeah, we'll have 52 solicitors. We'll each have our own. Our solicitor will have his own solicitor. We'll have, yeah. So I just want to be clear that everyone understands that even though a referendum has been passed, we have to make sure we understand the spirit of it, and we set it up in a way that it's safe for all of us, that we get what we need out of it, yet it's not putting us in conflict with the rest of the charter, which, the city has a lot of legal arteries, if you will. I mean, there's just so much that goes on in the city, and the city council has to be protected too. I mean, we have personal liabilities as well if we don't follow the right legal guidance. So I want to make sure we're all protected too. So I just want to make those comments. I'm sure there's other questions. It's good to get this process started. We are slightly delayed, so this is going to take us a series of weeks, if not a couple months, to really step through it and say, okay, this is where we think we need to go, and let's get it going.
Jeff.
Yeah. Strat?
Here we're dancing again like we've done for the last 12, 13 years. I think everybody answered their question here. Yes, 2 solicitors are needed. Yes, they should be able to communicate with each other. But to be tiptoeing now for another 2, 3, 4 months, like you're saying.
All right, Scott, well, do me a favor, write the resolution and we'll vote on it tonight, okay? If you think that's the thing to do. That obviously, this is not an easy thing to navigate through, and we have to be careful. And nobody ever said 2 lawyers are better than 1. Believe me, I didn't say that. It's not about the number of lawyers. It's about our process that's going to be critical in how we navigate things in the future. And it's okay that we have attorneys involved, but we have to make sure we understand the process and the protocol, because protocol is going to be very important here. You do not have 2 city solicitors, okay? We have 1 city solicitor who is the chief legal advisor for the city. That's clearly spelled out in the charter, and nothing has been done to replace that. And we need to understand that. I'm going to ask everyone to take time to read that portion of the charter. It's going to be very important that we understand that I'm not trying to make something up here. I'm not trying to push one thing or the other, but there are some real kind of gray areas here that we have to make sure, and maybe not so gray, but we have to understand them and make sure that if we do have a solicitor, which we will, what that role of that solicitor is and what our legal protocols will be. And maybe we set up some policies around that as well, just to make sure we're all clear and the future's clear.
I think that's all in there.
Additional comments? It's all in there. Johanny, go ahead.
So I understand obviously the reasoning for why this occurred and why we felt the need to have 2, because sometimes the 1 city solicitor representing the entire city presents some type of conflict of interest. So I would like to maybe figure out if we can put some type of either resolution or ordinance in place where like the city solicitor's job description, roles, responsibilities is very clear so that they are more of a neutral body representing everyone, right? Until we decide, I guess, if we will be in need of solicitor for city council. I don't know if that makes sense to the body, but
No,
that's
I
kind of
think
like
that's
this.
where we're going to end up, Johanny, where we're going to say, hey, you know, here is the protocol. If there's a conflict of opinion, this will be the protocol. At the end of the day, the final edict has got to be A, B, or C here because, you know, there's not a separate City of Reading administration and a separate City of Reading City Council. There's one City of Reading, and there has to be one legal voice. You know, when we put City of Reading on a document, we're one city, you know, it's not City of Reading minus City Council. So we have to set this up, you know, where the city's advisory council certainly can say, hey, challenge it, fight it, push the solicitor harder, do what we need to do here. I'm hoping we avoid that, but you know, there's value in having our own city solicitor advise us, but there's also danger in believing that we have our own solicitor as it relates to the City of Reading, because we don't have a separate City of Reading solicitor. There's one City of Reading solicitor.
Do we know how other municipalities?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know how many have separate solicitors and how they function with this charter form of government. I mean, Linda, have we seen any similar charter forms with multiple solicitors?
The only one I know of is Bethlehem.
Right.
I know Allentown has tried to get their own, Allentown Council has tried to get their own solicitor 3 or 4 times, and it's been denied by the electorate each time.
Yeah, and I would love to look at Bethlehem's model, their charter, what it says, what their chief legal advisor role is as far as city solicitor. Did they build policies for the city council solicitor? What do they look like? I mean, maybe there's a lot to be learned right there that we don't have to navigate through. Are they in a charter similar home rule
We
charter?
actually had,
Yeah.
I believe so. We actually had them down maybe
Right.
three or 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When we did the previous charter review, before this past one, that issue was delved into, and we did do an interview with Bethlehem. And I believe due to prioritizations of what went on the ballot, that issue was not put on the ballot at that point. But I think that would be a great resource for us and how they then moved forward to enact it. So it's so important to be able to have the roles defined so we don't get into this confused conversation of who's representing the city versus when you need to represent council.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. I mean, Linda, we should request what their charter states and also what their council policies are around the city council solicitor. I will remind everyone that our charter is not verbatim to theirs, I'm sure. So we're going to have to be careful as we look at it. And then the second thing would be everyone start listing out their questions and concerns so we can put some time to this to get through it. It's again, I don't think it's as clean, as white, clean and neat as everyone might think it is. It's going to take some defining and some policy behind it. So my biggest concern is we just put ourselves all at risk, including most importantly the city, and you know, get caught up with lawyers, you get spent a lot of money. Nothing against lawyers, Fred. Additional comments?
Yeah, I have my hand up, Jeff.
All right, I can't see it. I can only see the words here.
Well, that's fine. I think that we need to be cautious because as we think about this and as we approach this, I'm just going to encourage, fellow counselors not to think about, we've talked a lot about how the city is going to have their solicitor, and there's not going to be 2 city solicitors, but really the role that this position or entity can play. So as a city council solicitor, the legal department is not expansive. there are a lot of legal issues that are collecting. There are, specific areas in which this position, I want to be careful, it may not be a position, but in which this solicitor appointed can focus on advising counsel on issues that are not necessarily conflict issues, or they're not necessarily issues that are opposing what the city solicitor or the administration are presenting. And I want to say that now, as we then move forward into being thoughtful on preparing questions, so that we're not just thinking that this position, this solicitor legislation is created only in opposition or challenge to the city solicitor. I think there's a lot of benefit and use that we can outline in the future, because if you look, it also says that this solicitor shall have legal secretary, shall have staff required to support that solicitor. And so I just want to encourage us to be thoughtful around this, and not just a full stop at, that this would be combative or contrary in opinion to what the city solicitor is doing. And so my question to you, Jeff, is how would you like us to proceed in terms of submitting questions to you to keep this moving forward? If you can give us, a specific, before the next committee of the whole or before the next public meeting, submit these questions to us so you can keep us on track and we can keep this moving forward.
Yeah, I think we just need to submit all our questions and concerns to Linda. And I don't think everything's going to be combative, but I just want to understand protocols, because when I look, the charter provision provides that the city solicitor shall be the chief legal advisor for the mayor, the council, and all city departments and agencies. And it's great if we have an advisor, but the protocol needs to be clear that if we're going to be doing something that can impact the city, that the chief legal advisor has its blessing given to it, and I want to make sure we understand those things, that, we don't get an illegal opinion from our perceived advisor and say, oh, now the city can run with it. If the liability protection being the city solicitor isn't approving it, there's some real question here. So I guess the questions, need to be listed. If people want to believe that there's going to be 2 legal city solicitors and 2 chief legal advisors, one for the city of Reading and one for city council, then we need to ask those questions and raise them. I don't see the charter referendum stating that. I said I see it providing us a legal advisor. And if that's the case, no, they don't have to be conflicted. I mean, what if the city of Reading City Council wants to paint every 3rd tree purple, right? And our advisor says, yeah, you can do that. Well, we don't want to do that without the approval of the chief legal advisor of the city, because there could be liabilities of purple trees, who knows, right? So I'm using obviously an offbeat example. So I want to make sure everyone's thinking through the mechanics of it, reading the referendum questions, reading the charter wording around our existing solicitor, and raising concerns, ideas, and policy questions as to how this workflow could work smoothly or could be a problem. So, and it's not always conflictive, it's just mechanically, are we legally protected? And based on what you read, what do you believe the role to be? I think that would be my most important question to all the council members. Based on what you read in the referendum, what do you believe the role of the city council solicitor should be? And we don't have to answer that tonight, but that's a question that should be answered. And based on your response, address questions that may come out of that. Okay. I think that's an important starting point, because I think we need to get an understanding of what everybody feels, and then based on what they feel, what their concerns are. And then in the meantime, I asked Linda to pull down from Bethlehem their charter wording on their solicitor, and I'm assuming, did they do the council solicitor on a referendum, or was that just the way it was?
I don't recall.
Yeah, so we'll find out how they structured theirs and what it means to their workflow, and we'll go from there. I mean, I think we're getting the process started, but I think the most important question that I asked City Council is, what does the referendum question that was put on the ballot mean to you? And also read the section, I believe it's 226 of the charter, around the city solicitor, and put those two together and start playing out a workflow in your minds and come back and say, I believe it means this. And based on that, I have the following question. So I'm going to ask everybody to do that within the coming, week, and get it to Linda. We'll touch base again on this next Monday night. And if you have a chance to write it out, you'll be better prepared to speak to it as well. So let's put it down for another half hour next Monday, Linda. And let's keep this on the committee of the whole agenda till we've got it figured out.
Jeff, one
Is that
last
fair?
comment.
Is that fair? I mean, council, is that fair?
Yeah, Jeff, can I just remind you that Don, I know you can't see, so I don't know if you need me to help you, but and Strat, I know you're calling in, but Donna's had her hand up. And so how can I be helpful so that you're
I don't know,
you're
Linda,
calling
can
us?
you take that council screen down, that wording down? I think we've all had it up now. That's in my way. I guess I have the wrong.
Okay, I want to help you.
Yeah, I couldn't see everybody now. Yeah,
Share
we're fine
screen,
now.
yeah.
Go ahead, Donna.
Jeff, I can't say this strongly enough, that as we deliberate this, it should not be what we feel. What is the legal advice coming to us? And it should come from a neutral counsel, a neutral legal, well-versed person, lawyer, who can not only interpret what the charter says, interpret what this referendum says, and cover all the points that people have brought up. I don't think it should be someone in-house. I think it should be someone external who can speak with neutrality to what the charter says and to what this referendum says. Because if it's going to be based on feelings and internal advice, I guarantee you something's going to arise.
Yeah, I
Let's
think
get an independent outside counsel, for as important as this is, and this transcends this council and this administration. This goes forward. So yeah, let's talk to Bethlehem, but let's get an independent, well-versed municipal attorney who is neutral to this to walk us through it.
so. That's a good point. So I think the first step, though, is for all of us to make sure we're comfortable on the wording of the referendum and the wording of the solicitor and raising our questions. And then next week we can talk about getting a solicitor. We can start it now, but I want to make sure we're clear as a body individually on what was passed on a referendum and what the charter says. I'm not sure that everyone's had the time. I know back in March or whatever, I spent about an hour writing an email on this whole subject. So I'm somewhat familiar with it. I've spent some time with it, but before we get a lawyer, let's get some time. And I'm sure Fred wouldn't object that if this is something we felt we needed outside counsel to help us with, that wouldn't be a problem. So, we can start putting those feelers out, but I let the body to, direct where they feel that should go as well. So let's discuss the lawyer piece next week, but at the same time, I want everyone to get comfortable with the wording. Okay.
Jeff, I would suggest maybe that if I actually think it's a good idea to get independent counsel for this, so the council's comfortable that the advice they're getting is in the best interest of council. But I would be glad to work with whoever that attorney is, because, I have the institutional knowledge and, I've lived it. That an outside attorney might not understand as much, but I think that actually is a good idea to have.
Yeah, I have no problem outside counsel. I just want to make sure that council is really in tune with this as much as they need to be, because before we send this off, I think each council member needs to understand what the charter says about the solicitor and what the referendum says before we go out and get, a legal understanding of that. It's important that we understand it before we ask an opinion about it.
Might it be beneficial, since Mark Yoder is on the Charter Review Commission, would it be beneficial to have Mark come in since he's an attorney?
Wait a minute. Mark's on which commission?
Mark Yoder sat on the Charter Review Commission. Would it be helpful to have him come in to help with this?
I leave that up to the body. I don't know if we want to pick and choose somebody at this point, but we can certainly. Why don't we throw a few names out before next Monday night and pick who we want to involve? I don't want to jump here in a 3-minute kind of conversation unless is that fair? Everyone, if you have an attorney or two you think would be helpful in this process, let's bring some names to the table next week, and then we'll make a decision. Then we're not going to get through this in 3 weeks. I can tell you right.
Jeff, there's also we did a procurement for independent counsel for city council 2 years ago. You can, I think clerk's office received those when I was named acting. So you should have them, and we'd be glad to put together another if you guys wanted to go back out again and see who else is out there. Also, I think this could be done with in such that you wouldn't need to do a full purchasing process. I don't think it would be that costly, but there's a variety of ways to find good help.
Yeah. All right, I think legal help is a good idea. So let's, everybody, if you could just, if there's a name or two that pops out to you, Linda, if you come up with one or two others, let us know. And then we'll go over them next Monday night and figure out what we want to do. But I guys, I want to emphasize it's important that you take 20 minutes to read section, what is that again, 226 of the charter, and then the referendum wording, and just start playing out the workflow in your mindset a little bit, and then raise any questions, what you feel. Try to determine what you felt it means. And then secondly, what workflow questions would you have? The more minds we put behind this, the better off we're going to be. Unlike lawyers. No, I had to say that.
Oh,
Jeff, how about one comment?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I think we're all in accord that something has to be done concerning a solicitor for counsel. But we just cannot do what exactly you're doing and you did for the last 2 times that this come up for counsel. It was always continued. We'll do it next week. We'll do it next month. Okay? Let's get something resolved now.
So what do you want to do right now, Strat? What do you want to do? You want to hire me as the city? Who do you want to hire? Let's just hire them right now. And you define their roles, okay? There's nothing, this is the first time we're really digging our teeth into this, Strat, and we need to do it the right way. I'm just trying to be.
Yeah,
I appreciate
okay.
your concerns and your value. You're right. It should be moved along sooner. There's no disagreeing with that, but let's just try to be patient with us and step through it and do it right. Because as Donna stated, this is something that will carry forward a long time. And we want to make sure we set it up right. It's important. The people voted for it. They approved it. Let's get it right and understand it and move on. All right. Any other questions at this time? So we're going to have this on the agenda for 30 minutes next week as well, with some clear action steps, so we can move it forward to Strat's point. Otherwise, it's Jeff's fault. It's not getting done.
Yeah.
Which is fair. Right. I make the big money, so I take the heat. Right. All right. All right, guys, if there are no other comments on this, thank you everyone for your help on that. We'll move on to the next item. I don't know that partying is the word we should be using. I know that, but who's going to lead the way on this next topic?
If I could just tee it up, President Waltman, I had several conversations with members of the administration, the mayor's office, specifically in the administration, public works, and the police department. We've heard so many complaints regarding noise and litter and partying at the pagoda that has caught our attention. And I'm sure all of you read the article that appeared in the Reading Eagle. And we want to be consistent. We want to be aggressive in our enforcement. We know that there is a great deal of fatigue with the residents that are negatively impacted by all of the noise and the litter and the partying that's taking place up at the pagoda. And we also want to give the local district justices tools that will allow them to enforce, so no one is off on a technicality because the ordinance is not clearly spelled out in signage. Today, the mayor asked me to convene a working group that addresses the signage at the pagoda. It's going to include members of the mayor's office, public works, and the police department, because we want to take a proactive approach to this. I've had conversations with Chief Cornelli. I've had conversations with President Waltman. I've had conversations with Stan Rugas. So Stan is here this evening. He wants to share some of the work that Public Works has already done in a proactive sense. And Chief Tornelli is also willing to speak to the issue as well as far as enforcement, because the administration is no longer interested in and educating the public and taking a soft approach. We want to be more aggressive in our approach in terms of fines, in terms of letting people know that we truly mean business. And I think we're all going to move in the right direction moving forward here, but we are taking this very seriously. And the quality of life issues, not just at the pagoda, but throughout the entire city. I was visiting some parks and playgrounds today, and I saw some things that are really in need of addressing, and we will do that. But for tonight's purposes, we'll just discuss the pagoda. So I'm going to turn it over to Stan, who would like to share with council some of the things that they've been working. Stan?
Thank you, Abe. Charlie's online also. Last year, if council will remember, we had severe issues and we had a recommendation to do some traffic improvements to at least limit access from dusk to dawn. That would include gates. What happened in the interim was that was asked to put aside and go out through the bidding process. Charlie and I are working with a company, Gannett Fleming, and this is up on screen now as you'll see what we came out as a design. We are currently out to bid with this design where we are using three traffic arms, gates, if you will, that will restrict access. We are also changing the flow of the south and eastbound traffic. We are adding more signage to lower the speed limit. And part of the construction process, in terms of our love of the building itself and the grounds, we are repaving the parking area along with channeling water flow to make less intrusive onto the foundation of the pagoda. And we're also adding ADA compliance parking spots. You'll see what we're also doing is we're eliminating that island that sits directly in the middle of Duryea Drive as you're traveling up to the pagoda from down off of Perkiomen. So there's a lot of things we're doing. This design is out for construction bids as we speak. Within the next 2 weeks, we will have construction meeting on site with contractors and look at getting this done before the end of the summer. However, that is not going to eliminate the traffic difficulties and the parking difficulties we have. We have spoken to various people. If there's something we can do in the interim, we have a meeting on site tomorrow, either to use a Jersey barriers to restrict parking. We would do that as well. We also want to be consistent in our signage. Our signage does not reflect the true magisterial dictates that's going to allow for true enforcement. So we'll work through that. But this is what we have out now, and we suspect that we're going to have construction done in mid to the end of August. Questions?
Jeff?
Go ahead, Strat.
Everything that you have commented on is perfect. But I didn't hear anything about visibility of enforcement parts up there.
Well, they haven't got to that part yet, Strat, but any additional questions for Stan on this specific part of the presentation? I can't see it. Marcia?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the administration for coming up with a well thought out plan. And I think this is the beginning of looking at this whole area as being really a parkland. I think what's happened is it has more become just a place for people to gather, which sometimes is good, sometimes is problematic. But I think we need to respect this area as a parkland and make it so that the rules are consistent. If people want to enjoy themselves, that's fine. But the kind of behavior that we've seen, and this isn't recent, many of those who have helped clean up on the mountainside see large amounts of trash, including our trash cans, have just been tossed over It was shared with me, Stan, if you don't mind, about the barriers being tossed over the edge. So we need to really be able to look at how we can better secure this historical building. And I think this is the first step, and working together with community partners, and then also educating the public as far as how to use Parkland in a respectful, calm type of manner. It's not there for loud, raucous parties. It's there to appreciate the nature that we have on the mountainside.
Thank you, Marcia. Along with the safety improvements, we have out for bids for repair of the walls. So we're working on that too. We awarded Heim Construction some repair work, and you're looking at $20,000-$30,000 because of the extensive nature of what we need to do. And that's just skimming the surface, if you will.
Mhm.
All right, additional questions, just jump in, somebody, because I can't see everybody.
Yeah,
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead, Jahani.
Yeah, I'll wait.
Donna, go ahead, then Johanny.
Okay, I'm not good at screen sharing, but I wanted to, I'm going to sort of put my picture this picture right in front of the screen. This is the county park system. Can anybody see that? This is just over at the leisure area. There are gates there. County parks have clear signage, and the gates are closed at between dusk and dawn.
Sure.
So if we look at the pagoda and the Mountain Preserve area as a park, particularly the pagoda acreage, what would make that any different in terms of usage from our county parks and the buildings that sit on those? I think in this case, the county has it right. People enjoy the parklands, they enjoy the buildings, but there are some degrees of limitations. And if we're consistent with the county, then I think we're certainly on the right track.
All right, additional comments or questions?
So I think that in addition to the plans that are being presented for safety, security, we should also be speaking about some type of business plan, because the pagoda is a major attraction of the city of Reading. And as we are projecting for revenues to come into the city, we should really figure out how to either charge for entering or have some type of attraction that you can generate income for, because it's a great place that everybody raves about. It's a place where people go to hang out, relax, enjoy the view of the city. And yes, some go there and abuse it and they're partying and they're not being considerate of how their loud music affects the people that live in the area. But we should be talking about also how to really invest money into the pagoda and its area, because even the thought of food trucks and fees too. People need to get permits to do those things. So I want us to look at the big picture and see how this can be a long-term income generator for the city as well, and a major attraction for Reading.
I'm sorry, anyone else?
Hey, Jeff, could I speak to that? Because I think Johanny makes an excellent point. And the charge to the Foundation for the Reading Pagoda is indeed to work on a business plan. However, there's a lot of considerations that need to be looked at. We have a 110-year-old building. It's a wood structured building, has limited services, if you may. But that's not to say that that's not going to be looked at. In fact, as we speak tomorrow, there'll be a meeting with the administrators and Jeremy Serfos, and we can really delve down into how the building can best be used, what we need to do both internally and externally. There's so many possibilities. And as long as we all stay on the same page and be able to look at cherishing what I call the motherstone of the city, okay, to be able to really look at what we can do with the building, a lot of possibilities can come. This probably would have been done a year ago had we not been had the COVID issues to deal with. But now we're back on track, and I'm really pleased to see that things are moving forward. We will most likely, as a foundation, be circling back to City Council to be able to talk about some of the proposed components of the business plan and get input.
All right.
Jeff.
Additional comments?
This is Lucine. and I say this with full respect to my fellow counselors who are giving countless hours and energy and resources on the Pagoda Foundation. But I think what is also unique here and really needs to be brought up again to remind the public is this is a unique partnership and relationship between the city itself and the Reading Pagoda Foundation. And sometimes there can be confusion or exhaustion of resources or, where the responsibilities truly lie in terms of delegation of, the building in itself, the repairs, the development, the fundraising, the programming, and there's not just one entity, which is good. So again, like I said, with respect, I think that the opportunity is here to truly clarify, when we had worked on some previous intermunicipal agreements or inter-authority agreements, the role of the city in working with other assets that belong to the city or other groups that work with the city. This is the same situation here. Where we now hopefully can move forward and say, how can we better work together with the foundation and the city? The pagoda is not just the responsibility of the city. It's also not just the responsibility of the foundation. So I think putting a plan forward in place in the future needs to show and demonstrate how those two entities, in addition to all of the people who live in the city of Reading and all of the people around the world who visit the pagoda, can all be active stakeholders and contributors to this iconic landmark that we are lucky to have here in Berks County, right? So I just want to bring that out because I think when we talk about it, and Marcia, when you're talking about it in two roles. You're talking about it on behalf of council and you're talking about it as the foundation, and that clarity needs to be really transparent so people understand how they can help and how it works together.
Yeah. Jeff, can I just speak to the transparency? Because I think that's important. I was appointed by council to represent council on the foundation. Okay, so that the role is really clear. And I look at, as each issue comes up, which is for the city to address first. When you talk about intermunicipal agreements, we have a very clear agreement with the city and have had one in place for many years. It needs to be revisited and taken into consideration, how we partner, who we partner with, but it's been spelled out. And just for clarity, the foundation is responsible for the operation of activities within the pagoda and not on the external property around it. But in order to use the interior, we need to be able to, first of all, it's a city-owned building, so we need to have the city to be able to say what can and can't be done with the building. And also we need to jointly look at how we look at funding to be able to support all those activities. And that's a real heavy lift for taking responsibility for that building. But I think we're on the right track, and indeed more public input and more dialogue is definitely needed, and working together so that agreement, it does need updated to strengthen it. We can move ahead and do that. And if anyone has any issue with me continuing to be on the foundation, if you see that there's a blur of roles, I'm always open and transparent, and I would be appreciating the feedback.
And for
And
clarity.
you're right, I put my
foundation as
dedication
well.
in that.
What's
that?
I think we're losing the scope of our discussion here. If somebody wants to discuss that topic in a future meeting, I think we can do that. Let's get back to the security here that the administration's trying to go over with us if we can. The questions built around what Stan has proposed and those changes. If not, we'll open it up to, I guess, the chief for additional comments. Is that correct, Dave? All right, so any other questions? All right, we'll turn it back to Stan and the chief.
All right, as the managing director mentioned earlier, we are far past the education in providing warnings to individuals who are in city parks, who are up at the pagoda, who, for lack of a better term, can't act like decent folks. It's ridiculous the amount of resources that the police department, in terms of manpower and finances, has to put into a problem because folks just can't act like decent people towards their neighbors. And that's the bottom line here. So with that in mind, again, as the managing director said, the education, the warnings are over. Our officers will be issuing citations to anyone in violation of city ordinances, of state laws. They will be requesting maximum fines. And at any time possible where they can physically take someone into custody for violations of state law, they'll be doing those things. We're tired of dealing with this. We're tired of hearing about it. And we're tired of individuals who come to our city or live in our city who can't act like good neighbors. So the education, the warnings are over. We're going to come down with a heavy hand on this, and we're going to do it until it stops.
All right, thank you, Chief. Questions around that? Anyone? Comments? Donna.
Yes, and it's, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Stan. I think it's interesting, and I just want to clarify too that I'm on foundation and do service on city council, so it's transparent for me too. But I appreciate what the chief is saying. I think it's been interesting reading what people have had to say. Certainly, I'm a strong supporter of freedom of speech and a free press. Stand against anyone for that and for it. But I think what I've seen that has really been astonishing to me is among the comments, Facebook comments has been actual threats against the building. If we're taken away, we'll take the building down. So I think now is the time to make sure our security is entirely bolstered up there. Is paramount, as it's important. And I know our staff and our police are really stretched, but the vindictiveness of people who take advantage of the situation out there and don't do right in the public arena. I think we just have to be aware of those kind of threats and not brush them off, but to take them seriously as we look at security for the building as well as for the good people who are wanting to enjoy it. So I hope that, I believe our cameras are where they should be, and I believe our surveillance is where it should be, but I'm very concerned when I see public threats to the building expressed on Facebook.
Additional comments?
Chief.
Yeah, go ahead, Strat.
Listen, what police departments patrol up there?
The Pagoda, it's just Reading.
Just Reading?
I saw Central Berks go by on Sunday afternoon, Chief, when I was up there.
Okay, yeah, we see them occasionally up there, but most of the enforcement work all of the details are done by our department.
And what district justice are they taken to if they are arrested up there?
It depends on when the violation occurs. If it is after hours, they go down to Reading Central Court, so we could get any district justice or senior DJ that's on duty. Most of the citations are handled by MDJ Johnson's office.
Whatever happened to the car that used to patrol up there certain hours? Just patrol to make sure that there was no problem.
We're still up there. We've had to limit those hours. I mean, it costs a ridiculous amount of overtime to keep a presence up there on the mountain all the time.
It was broken up, but I understood. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other quick questions or comments? I will just add, Chief, that, if there's any additional resources that you guys need, to let us know. That's all you can do. I agree with the chief that, we waste a lot of resources up there. And these aren't 14-year-olds, they're young adults, and they should just find the right balance. And nobody wants to keep them away, but they're kind of pushing themselves into that corner. And it's unfortunate. Marcia, and then, is it Donna and then Marcia? Sorry.
Just wanted to, I always like to be able to look at the positive sides. And whenever we're discussing this, and it seems to come up in the press, it seems to come up in Facebook, the reality is there's a lot of folks that come up there that are having a good time, that are enjoying themselves, that are being respectful, that we need to be able to emphasize that. it's a small amount that are causing the biggest problem. We know that's true of where we see crime. So it doesn't surprise me. But I think what we need to do is turn this, and I believe Councilwoman Ventura spoke very eloquently last week about this. We really need to be able to make this a family-friendly place that people can enjoy, that they understand that it's on top of a mountain, that's beautiful scenery, beautiful walking paths, and be able to really focus on the positive nature. And so I'm going to try to continue to interject that as the dialogue, because it really devastates me when I hear Councilwoman Reed's comments about who might want to harm that building. Okay. But there are people that have become very mean-spirited and very vindictive. It's a sad state of our society, but let's pull together the people that are positive, because I know there's a lot more out there that are willing to move things in a good direction.
Okay, any additional, go ahead, Donna.
And I just want to thank among the people who have concerns, and I will share this later with the managing director and the chief. There was one very good comment from an individual who lives on 13th Street who approached me directly via messenger of some ideas. And I think it's great that our citizens are not just, as Marcia said, complaining about it, but they are trying to come up with viable suggestions that can help us deal with it. And I think that speaks to the quality of folks we have in the city of Reading. And this was this was the first time I had been reached out to by this individual, and I was very a young man who owns a house nearby and wants to live in peace, but doesn't want to preclude people from enjoying the mountain. Just wants to find that balance of tranquility and joy that we all want. Lives nearby, and I will share that with the chief and with the managing director. It's very good suggestion.
Okay, any other comments?
Jeff, just a quick one too. I think, we're seeing how the city is stepping forward and demonstrating, what we are able and willing to do, and the tone set today. And I think, I don't want to lose the opportunity here based on what Donna just said, to really call to action and maybe, create a task force or something in which the foundation has spots that are open. They're looking for feedback in positive ways in which people can come together and support the pagoda. So it's not just the city coming in, but again, I think there's an opportunity here while we're consistently talking about this, while people are thinking about it, to open up the opportunity to get people's collective thoughts together on how to preserve and bring prosperity to the pagoda.
Okay, any additional comments at this time on this topic? All right, if not, thank you, Abe, Chief, Stan, for the ongoing support. I'm sure the neighbors will appreciate the effort. It's not easy playing cat and mouse, but it shouldn't even be necessary. So unfortunately, it's a waste of city time and resources, but it's a necessary thing to be done. So. All right, we're going to go into agenda review, and just give me about 5 seconds to pull up the agenda. Okay, this evening we're going to have invocation by Reverend Bruce Alec, Zion Baptist Church. We don't have any proclamations or presentations this evening. Linda, how many public speakers do we have this evening?
4 on agenda matters.
And are they all signed up? Are they all signed up for live speaking?
1 is signed up for live speaking. The other 3 are written comment.
All right, so we'll see if our live speaker is present. If not, you're willing to read the written comments for us?
Correct.
All right, so we have some consent agenda items this evening. We have 4 resolutions. The first is authorizing the solicitor to execute the acknowledgement forms from the Berks Tax Claim Office accepting the repository bids on 213 Hudson Street, 527 and 519 Strong Alley, and 416 Orange Street. comments or questions on those specific, on that specific resolution? All right. The next resolution is authorizing the submission of an application for the Pennsylvania WalkWorks grant with the Pennsylvania Department of Health in the amount of $20,000. Somebody want to give us a walkthrough on that? Anybody familiar with this grant app?
Yes, Council President, the Walk Works grant is actually proposed to us by Penn State Health to improve the walkability as well as biking through the city. It's the very first mission of which we would try to encourage utilizing bikes and walking through this through and creating safe pedestrians. So that's what the grant is all about.
Okay, questions or comments, anyone? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Lucy.
Jeff, it's Lucine. Jamal, what aspects of the walkability and bike accessibility does this $20,000 grant cover with Penn State Health?
Very good question, Councilwoman Lucine. The study, the grant itself will provide us with an active transportation plan. And that is basically to provide a more structure to the city's previous action plan that was developed in 2015, 2016, in which we will be able to start structuring, utilizing the Downtown Plus to improve on walkability, as well as how we are going to enhance these programs. It is not, $20,000 is not going to give us a grant per se for fixing, repairing, or modifying any of these, but it will identify the passages through which we will be able to create additional programs in the future.
And Jamal, is this for downtown or is this for the city? Because I ask, because obviously there is a strong project underway in the 18th Ward. And in addition to that, the county level has their bike and pedestrian 2020 plan that they had released. So is that in conjunction with that, or is it specifically for the Downtown Plus?
The project itself, or the study itself, is actually encompassing the whole entire city. However, because we are trying to include this within the scope of work for Stantec, it will primarily focus on the Downtown Plus or the downtown area. But that does not mean, based on the active zones, that we cannot create this everywhere else, or can be implemented in other parts of the city.
Okay, thanks. I'm a big advocate. I'm happy to see this proposed. I think there's quite an opportunity. We have a lot of arteries leaving and leading in and out of our city boundaries to our bordering municipalities, to the Schuylkill River, trailheads and beyond. So thank you for your attention to this.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions or comments regarding that resolution? All right, if not, we'll move on to the next resolution. It's authorizing a one-year extension of the ProChamp registration program. Can anybody give us a quick overview of that extension?
Jeff, that actually does not need to go forward. We still have until the end of the year, at least under the former, there was a discussion at the one of the earlier committee of the holes when the individual from ProChamps came and spoke to us, where we thought it was a 2013 agreement that had long expired and was on renewals. This, there's a 2017 agreement that is still active.
So you're requesting we remove this from the agenda?
Correct.
All right, okay. We'll move on to the next resolution, authorizing the submission of the PennDOT traffic signal maintenance agreement for all traffic signals and signs in the city. Does Stan or Charlie want to update us on that one?
If you don't mind, Tim Kroll is also online. Tim has been very instrumental in getting this done. He's been working on this for a few years. And Tim, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council President. Yeah, this resolution is a new PennDOT resolution, traffic signal maintenance agreement, which is actually supposed to save us some time. What we've normally done in the past is had to have separate resolutions every time we've updated a traffic signal permit, whether it be a modification or a new signal. And that's quite time consuming. So PennDOT came up with a new agreement that'll allow the elimination of separate resolutions under this kind of unified agreement. And the resolution here is to allow our managing director to sign that agreement, which then will carry forward for all these new signals, including the one that's being looked at here for the Marion Street station. So this is statewide. All the municipalities that are involved with traffic signals are being asked to approve this resolution.
Okay, council, any questions or comments? All right, if not, thank you, Tim and Stan, for that overview.
You're welcome.
We're going to move on to, obviously we'll have Abe here this evening for the administrative report, and we'll have Maria for the auditor's report. And then we're going to have a brief overview from the Board of Health from Dr. Dedhoff. And then we're going to move on to ordinances for final passage. The first one being authorizing appropriations transfer of $40,634.03 from project 31-0103, general ledger 2990 fund balance, to project 3103, general ledger 4510, general plan supplies, in order to make the Samuel Pottinger Trust donations available for use during the current fiscal year. Maria, this is the one you wanted to take a closer look at. Do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Council President. First, I want to say thank you to the Law Department, Frey and Anna, for taking a pretty good look to this, to the will from Samuel Pottinger. Also, I got in contact with World Fargo. World Fargo is the organization who management the will, the trust. And basically, they came up with the same conclusion that the Law Department, that Anna and Frey came out with, how the money can be spent. Even so, in the ordinance doesn't say how the money is going to be spent, but they are stating that the fund is going to be transferred to Fund 31. When Anna was looking the file, she found out something from back in the days from her bank company, that her bank company recommend that the fund should be, that the city had to keep the funds separate from any other funds. So I don't have anything against transferring the money to the agency fund. However, we have some restriction how the money can be spent. Frey or Anna, if you have anything to say about it? I mean, but I want to say thank you to you, Frey and Anna.
No, I would just say that as the resolutions drafted or the ordinance is drafted, I think it's appropriate. I think that fund does segregate the money, and it is now understood that the funding needs to be used for charitable purposes that benefit the underserved. So moving forward, we'll make sure that that's how those funds are distributed, and that'll be, moving forward. And this seems to come up every 17 years or so. So it's something hopefully we'll be prepared for when it comes up again sometime.
And something that the World Fargo, the person who I talked to at World Fargo, that she made very clear is that if the intent of the city is to spend the money or to disperse this money we had to keep very good documentation how the money is going to be dispersed. And I forward the information to council. I send it to Linda to be forwarded the information that I received from Wells Fargo and also to the administration and the law department. Thank you.
Okay, council, any comments or questions relevant to Maria's comments?
Johanny has her hand up.
Go ahead, Johanny.
Just so that for clarity and for my understanding. So this trust there's restricted money that is exclusively to be used for charitable causes. Am I correct?
Under the
That's
office of
correct.
the mayor.
Somebody, we had two people at once. So what is the answer to that response, to that question?
Yes, according to the information that I received from Wells Fargo, the people who management, the trust, the will, it is for charitable. And is the information that was sent to council this afternoon, they provide detail how this can be, how the money can be spent. And they also say they're gonna have, they wanna hear from the law department at Wells Fargo to have a better understanding because the language is very vague in the will.
Information. So the general plant supplies account, does that allow for money to be used for charitable causes? Or should this money be put in like human relations, for example?
The funds can be used for charitable purposes under the office of the mayor. The purpose of moving it into an expense line under general plant supplies is to help track the expenses so that when the audit is done, we can accurately report on them as is appropriate.
I think Johnny's question is what specific activities will the funds be spent on? And why is it under the general plant supplies? And are they considered charitable, which is a broad-based category? Can somebody respond to that?
Well, Council President, so most recently, the mayor's office, in conjunction with the police department, held a gun buyback program. So specifically, that was a donation to 91 members.
We lost Jamar, but I think what he's saying is that the general, there you go, Jamar, that you're back. So there's a variety of activities that are charitable. That's just the placeholder under general plant supplies is what I'm hearing. Okay. Jamar, can you hear us? Yeah, we lost you there for a moment, Jamar. So you're saying that the general plant supply is a bit misleading. It's just a placeholder, but
It's a placeholder under the agency fund account so that the mayor's office.
We lost Jamar again. They were freezing up on us. All right, Johanny, I think he's answered the question. It appears, and Maria, I'm sure you got an eye on this, that the city's going to use these funds as stated in the will, for charitable contributions, which, as long as it's directly helping people, in this case, in the gun buyback program, it's helping the entire city. So similar activities would be considered charitable, right? We're all okay with that?
We are going to make
I don't
sure
know
it's
about
used
that.
for the right purpose. It may not be the gun buyback program. We're still discussing whether that qualifies. We're thinking it might not, and that those funds could be used elsewhere, and it'll I think, be an accounting situation more than a legal one. But I think
let me ask, is this agency fund that we're putting these dollars into isolated specifically for these trust dollars?
Yes.
Yes. So the moving of these funds out of that fund would require council's approval.
Yes, Council President, we're moving it out of fund balance to put it in an agency fund account, which will segregate it from the general fund balance.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe next year we can retitle the account or give it a different account name. That way we're all clear on what it says. And that way there's no confusion, that's all. So Johanna, yeah, we're just taking out of the big slush fund where it could get washed away quickly. And protecting it by putting it in the agency fund, which again, any disbursements moving forward would require council's approval out of that fund. So good questions, good answer.
Just wanted clarity, being that, I mean, we are voting on this, correct? So I just want to make sure that we have, good checks and balances and just clear accounting. And, when I look at the word general plant supplies, it doesn't indicate to me money for charity. So that is why I asked the question, because, right, we want to make sure that we got our I's and cross our T's.
Yeah, no, there's no disagreement there. It's a good question. Okay. Any other comments? Marcia?
Yeah, and then just a point of clarity. I think when you are maybe not as familiar with governmental budgeting, general plant supplies may sound like general when really it does have a specific purpose behind it. So I think it's important as we go into the budgetary session again this year that we understand what each of those line items means, because I think it's clear that we understand, so that if we need to explain it to the public, we can do the same thing.
All right, guys, sticking to the resolutions. Any other comments on, ordinances? Any other comments on that ordinance?
Jeff, one more thing. I believe we had to keep the name of the Samuel Patigar Trust in the account just to make that clear, and we don't commingle that with anything else.
Right. And this is going to be an isolated fund for those fundings, and retitling would be helpful if there's a way, if you had a subtitle to it somewhere, Jamar.
We can do that through the accounting office. Absolutely, Council President.
Because that's how the account is listed in the general fund is say a Samuel Patigar Trust donation. So I think we should keep this, if the money is going to be moved to the agency fund, I think we had to keep the same discretion in the account.
True, or it could be considered council pizza fund money.
No, that's not general plant supplies, Jeff.
It's happened before.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, the next item under ordinances is authorizing the total transfer.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear me?
Yeah,
All right, so
go ahead, Johanny. Where'd Johanny go now?
Disappeared.
We're losing people here tonight.
Here she's coming back.
cut off.
There you go, Johanny, the floor is yours.
Again, are we making all the necessary changes to Bill 38-2021 so that we are all comfortable voting in favor of this? So I just want to make sure that
Yeah, I'm comfortable with what they're going to do. I mean, they're going to retitle that fund as, you know, the Patigar Trust dollars, if you will. So we're clear on it, at least some label on it.
The Council President, the account code will be changed. That's an administrative matter to be consistent with the budget.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, guys? All right, let's move on to the second ordinance, and that's authorizing the total transfer of $99,000 from the General Ledger Rental Parking Authority to General Ledger Contracted Services to provide funding for special counsel to the Planning Commission to provide specialized legal advice relating to subdivision and land development projects, review of ordinance amendments, agreements, and resolutions, and general legal matters involving planning and zoning. Excuse me, this was introduced at the May 10th regular meeting. Comments, questions? Donna?
What the name of the firm and how the RFP was done? Can we just have a brief overview of that?
Right. Donna, Councilor Reed, I believe Dave Paris, the zoning administrator, was on the Cal meeting last week to provide detailed analysis of this.
But I mean, I think it's good to have it reiterated as we vote on it.
If you look at the actual agenda memo, it kind of gets into a little bit more detail, but not with specific firms, but a lot of them we've discussed before, and it envisions there could be a future RFP or future contracting. But right now it's not just legal, it's other technical consultants as well. And Mr. Paris did a fairly thorough memo, and I worked with him on the agenda memo, which explains it in some detail.
Okay, any additional comments, Marcia?
Yeah, just to clarify, what I see on what we're voting on tonight is authorizing the transfer of the 99,000. Okay, but it doesn't say who is going to be providing that service. It just says we're transferring the funds. So isn't that other issue something that would be coming in the future as far as what firms will be contracted with?
Correct. Yeah, there are other ones that we've already went through purchasing and council, and brought to council, or will be in the future.
Okay.
This is just, this is strictly to make the funds available.
All right, any additional comments or questions? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can't even count that high, 7 ordinances for introduction. The first one, ordinance amending the city code chapter 576 vehicles and traffic section 503, clarifying that parking meter enforcement is exempted on Sundays, New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Eve, and Christmas. Aren't they nice for all that? But any comments or questions on this? I would have thought these were already kind of recorded somewhere in an ordinance, Linda, but no.
Yes, it's actually just a restatement of the existing language to make it clearer. And that the need for that was raised by some questions the Parking Authority Board received from residents.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Again, we'll have 2 weeks to review these. All right, the next one is amending the city code chapter 576 vehicles traffic part 13 motorized devices and ATVs by modifying the enforcement process and adding due process and an appeals process, which will allow the police department to inevitably destroy the vehicles that are seized. Anybody want to give us kind of a recap of this before we get into any questions?
Or the long and short of it is it allows us the ability to take ownership of these vehicles and destroy them so they don't go back out in the streets. These are vehicles that no one can prove ownership for. So we're sitting on about 39 dirt bikes, ATVs that nobody can prove ownership on. So this will give us the ability to go through the due process to take custody of them, allow for an appeal process or somebody to provide ownership information before they're destroyed.
And it also allows for the party to appeal the seizure. And actually ordinance C and D are also part of that whole movement.
All right.
C pushes the appeal to the Code and License Appeals Board, and D applies some towing, relocation, and storage fees of the ATVs and the dirt bikes.
Okay. All right, so we might as well cover all four of these at this, all 3 of these at the same time.
Yes.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Obviously, this is an effort to keep illegal bikes off of our streets and protect everybody. Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, and I think that this is very good to have everything codified the way that it has been. I think what's more important is to have the public understand, after incidents that happened in my neighborhood, that the police handled very respectfully. It was really clear the parents, when they buy these bikes for their children, think that they're giving them a prize rather than something that has a lot of responsibility. And when then they're confiscated, there is like, well, why did this happen? So we really need to have a concerted education program about what all this means, because the average dirt bike owner, and I know that there's a belief that, well, we should all know all the laws that are on our books, but even all of us sitting at this table, probably even those that have enacted ones, don't are aware of the details of all of them. So I really feel we have a responsibility to the public to do really extensive education.
All right, additional comments? Yeah, I mean, whatever tools it takes to help the department. This is a good cooperative effort to try to shore up the laws coming from the police to us with our assistance to make sure we can word it correctly so that it can be implemented. So good work for everybody. If there are no other comments or questions.
Jeff, I had a question for Fred as far as reading these onto the record. How detailed do I need to be about ordinance D with all the different things that are in that table?
I think particularly given that it's being video recorded and that there's also it's written into the agenda, I think you can kind of summarize the, you're talking about the one that lists the
Right.
actual fees.
Mhm.
I think you can say various fees for, and then list the things that where the fees are changing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, okay. The next ordinance is E, authorizing an appropriations transfer of $241,000 from the general fund rental parking authority to capital fund public works parks to enable the construction of the Canal Street Skate Park. Comments, questions, thoughts, Jamar?
Council President, thank you. This is this ordinance, along with ordinance G, are a reallocation of the parking authority revenue increase that happened earlier this year. Again, this creates the budget framework in order to proceed with those initiatives. They don't necessarily create expenditure lines. Those would come back to council at a later date through the contract approval process, as is customary.
All right, any other comments or questions?
I had a question. Jamal, did we receive the money from the parking authority?
They were supposed to begin the remittance of their new allocation back in March. I've reached out to them to follow up on that and should have something for you later this week. But that new remittance of $146,750 per month should have happened back in March. I did receive your message to the managing director late this afternoon, and we are seeking a response.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? If not, we'll move on to the next ordinance for introduction. That is restricting parking to maintain the requisite number of no parking signs along both sides of North 9th Street in 11 and 1200 blocks as depicted on the parking drawing titled Exhibit A. The purposes to comply with the conditions of PennDOT Highway Safety Occupancy Permit Application 238205 associated with the Marion Street Fire Station project. Any comments or questions regarding that ordinance? Pretty self-explanatory. All right, the final ordinance is authorizing the total appropriations transfer of $294,336.75 from general fund rental parking authority to general fund part-time wages in order to increase base pay to $15 for most part-time staff. Comments or questions on this specific ordinance?
Council President, sorry.
Go ahead, Jamal.
Yes, so the agenda memo provides the full background on the mayor's initiative here. The idea being the mayor wanted to create parity among part-time staff vis-a-vis being able to afford a living wage of $15 an hour. During the pandemic, during the height of the pandemic and shutdown, when we had to move to increase cleaning and essential services being provided, it became clear how underpaid some of our custodial staff were relative to similarly situated employees and at least a part-time complement. So the mayor was desirous to provide an increase to $15 an hour for as many of our part-time staff as we can. And through the 22 budget process, we endeavor to catch up with any potential part-time employees that might be left behind with this ordinance. This is also, again, a reallocation of funding that increased as a result of the parking authority agreement from earlier this year.
All right, comments or questions on this, council? Jamar, how many part-time employees does this cover?
On or about 24 directly.
24? And the 294,000 is covering 24? No, there's something missing.
So it covers quite a few employees across multiple divisions. I provided to council last week with the ordinance, the detailed breakdown of it by department and division, Council President.
Okay, does it have a coming from and going to column? I didn't see it, I'll look for it. All right. Okay, any other comments or questions, council? All right, we'll have 2 weeks to ponder those and chance to discuss them a little further if necessary in 2 weeks or 3 weeks probably. June 14th actually. So that's 3 weeks out. All right. Next topic is resolutions. We have a resolution ratifying the ASME 3799 contract. Any comments or questions relevant to this contract? Does somebody want to provide us kind of the the top 5 details of this contract that we should be aware of?
I have 3 highlights for you, Council President.
Yep.
This contract formalizes for the Supervisors Union 11 paid holidays for the year. The number 1 highlight for the Supervisors Bargaining Unit will be a 4% wage increase in 2021 and a 4% wage increase in 2022. Secondly, it increases the vacation allotment from 1 to 3 years of service to 7 days. It was previously 5. And then at 4 years of service, the vacation allotment increases to 10 days per year.
At what year does that go to 10 days?
At 4 years of service.
And what was the current allotment to 10 days? Was it 5 years or something?
At 4 years, it was previously 7 vacation days.
Okay. And any other?
And for 1 to, and for 1 to 3 years, it was previously 5 vacation days.
All right. And any other highlights for this contract?
The last one would be work performed on Sundays would be subject to double time.
And that would currently be time and a half?
Yes.
And Jamar, have you projected out the cost of this contract on a fiscal year starting in 2022? Have you guys done that? I'm sure you've done some assessment.
Not beyond 2022. We've costed it out for 21 and 22, and both of them have been reviewed and approved by Gordon and BJ.
And what would be the total annual cost, at least for 21 of this contract change? I know you can't necessarily cover the vacation days, but the wage increases, what do they translate to dollar-wise?
I don't have it in front of me. If you give me a couple seconds, maybe 45, I can pull it up.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not connected to the network.
Do you have a rough idea of memory?
On memory, I don't want to give a quote because it's going to be way off. I didn't remember the top line for this bargaining unit. I can say that the exit plan that was approved by council in 2019 governs the maximum allotment, and we are not exceeding that.
Right. It would be, if you can pull that up before our meeting, that would be helpful for both A and B as far as resolutions. Let's council questions on this contract in the meantime. Questions?
Yes, I'd actually like to request that we table both Resolution A and Resolution B because it's a lot of pages, it's a lot of reading. I started reading the FOP contract and I'm not done and I already have a lot of questions. So I would like to thoroughly read each contract before making a decision on it.
Well,
Any other comments?
respectfully, Council President, I'm happy to answer questions in an executive session or something like that. But these are administrative matters to negotiate the contracts. And there could potentially be issues if there were delays in ratification. I would be concerned about.
Well, extensive delays, Jamar, but when you say delays, what are you talking? You mean in a month delay or something like that?
A month would be very concerning. If it's just going to be a week, maybe we could do a special meeting. That would be preferable.
If it's just going to be a week. When did we first receive these documents? I'm sorry, I should know that, but does anybody know?
Last
P1 was
Wednesday,
Friday.
Last Wednesday was $37.99, and last Friday was the police.
All right, so that's not a lot of time for council to research on. I'm just trying to make sure Johanna has the right to be able to review these documents. Well, everyone does. Marcia, go ahead before we come back to that question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important that people feel comfortable reviewing it, but I also think we need to set a time frame. And I also think we need to be very clear. These are legal documents that are not shared with anyone beyond the administration and council. And can I get Fred's opinion on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. They're, the holding an information strategy and negotiation session related to the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement is one of the reasons you can go into executive session, and draft forms of collective bargaining agreements are not public records, and the fact that they were shared is confidential. So all discussions, I think, should be in executive session.
If we got into
and obviously not shared with.
Yeah. All right.
Documents are public now.
Well, hold on a second.
They're on the website.
Right. Well, what's on the agenda? What I'm saying is the discussions. As I understood the question was, having this discussion and asking questions about the process should be held in executive session.
Sure. Thank you, Fred.
A timeline we can discuss now. I mean, we're fine, right? We don't. So I'm hearing from the administration the timeline. I would like to give council at least another week, and maybe Linda, could we get a special meeting in next week after our committee of the whole? Is it possible to schedule that?
Well, next Monday is Memorial Day.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm assuming you don't want to meet on Monday.
Right.
Sure. No. So we're scheduled to meet next Tuesday, right?
No.
We can be. We weren't actually.
Off week, right? I don't have any. Is anybody opposed to meeting next Tuesday? I think it's an important enough topic. I want, especially Johanna's one of our newer members, to make sure she's comfortable with. We don't ratify contracts. I don't want to hold up the contracts, that's for sure. But I want to make sure it has the appropriate amount of time to review them. Go ahead, Lucy.
Is it possible to go into a brief executive session after this committee of the whole, and then possibly that may change the request for further time or scheduling a special meeting next week?
Okay, we can try that. Otherwise, otherwise we'll shoot for next week. Go ahead, Melissa.
No, I was just agreeing with Lucine.
Yeah, we'll discuss it in an executive session at the end of our meeting here. And then if it's not resolved, another week of time is fair. So we'll go from there. From what I'm hearing from Johanna, she's not had a chance to go all the way through it and identify all her questions. So we'll discuss that during executive session and go from there. All right. The next contract, did you want to give us the highlights from that one, Jamar? The second resolution. Jamar?
Yes.
There we go.
Apologies, just getting my bearings and access to the network. The other contract up for approval tonight is the FOP contract. Contract highlights include a wage increase of 4.5% in 2021 and 2022. We believe this significant investment will help in the retention of our officers, as well as help us to make the case during recruitment that employment with Reading Police Department, still provides a solid career with the ability to provide for your family. The contract also includes an increase in bereavement leave. This issue was identified and exacerbated by the pandemic, rather. So the increase in bereavement leave allows the ability for officers to take time non-consecutively based on the date of notification of death in the family. Previously, as soon as you were notified, you would have to immediately take your leave. And this provision allows at least 2 weeks from the initial notification of death for officers to grieve, to plan, and then respond to the death of a loved one. We've also increased the sick leave donation program, we've allowed for a sick leave donation program under the FOP bargaining unit. While this is not a new program or particularly novel, it did not currently exist for members of this bargaining unit. And as we've become accustomed to, if you're sick, stay home, we believe this incentive will allow for an officer to actually stay home if it were needed, particularly in response to the pandemic. And if you give me 1 second. We have an expansion of military leave. We currently have a lot of former military and reserve officers that have weekend leave commitments to fulfill. We've expanded the military leave to 14 days to provide guaranteed paid leave when those officers have to go for training for military leave. Last additional incentive related to leave time would be a new sick leave incentive program. Again, while we support our officers' ability to stay home when they are sick, we also believe in incentivizing against any potential for abuse. So under this contract, we offer $1,000 per year to every officer that does not use any sick leave during that calendar year. This benefit drops to $500 if up to 24 hours or 2 full days of sick leave are used. 2 more highlights for you, members of council. We agreed to a clothing allowance increase. There was a lot of feedback from members of the bargaining unit about how the clothing allowance directly impacts the materials that they purchase, whether it's the lights that they use on their tool belts or boots, steel toe boots that they have the ability to run in. They are not cheap. Message was received and we increased the clothing allowance to, I believe, $375 for uniform and non-uniform members of the department. The last highlight I would bring to you is a training incentive. In this area, we've begun with a modest increase to the bomb squad, which is our specialized team that serves as a regional asset as they respond to new and emerging threats. The administration believes future investments can include a new training center, and education center that would help the Reading Police Academy, which also serves as a regional asset for a lot of police departments in the area. With that, I welcome questions.
Okay, any comments or questions? Again, I think this isn't similar to the first item, but are there any specific questions around what was publicly stated here? My biggest concern, Damar, is just the stratification of those dollars, what that means for 21, 22. If we could try to pull that together, just so we all know what we're heading into.
I will get those top line costs to you in an email to you and all members of council.
Okay. We'll go into an executive session, excuse me, here in a few minutes. Let me finish this agenda review. I lost my agenda. There we go.
Jeff, looks like Johanny has her hand up.
Yep, go ahead, Johnny.
And I'm glad you mentioned the $375. When I was reading that contract, it specifically said $375 allowance to non-uniformed employees. So would that be non-police officers?
No, not at all. That would be for our detectives and criminal investigations. Some of those members are not required to be in uniform previously, and so they would be covered under this increase as well.
Yeah, and also point out that there are no civilian employees that are covered by the FOP collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, if there are no other comments at this time, I think that concludes our agenda review. Yeah. No, there's one more.
President?
Yeah, there's one more resolution, and that is confirming the appointment of Fred Latchett as city solicitor. That discussion will be voted on during the meeting. And the discussion can be held then, but are there any comments at this time? Okay. All right. So is there any, go ahead, Stan.
Yes, may I have Tim as we also, but we also have a resolution for, as it relates to ordinance F. Should we discuss that also in terms of parking for a 9th and Marion? It's just to the next level of what we need to do in terms of PennDOT and the highway occupancy permits we need to establish, because we did have to increase parking. That's on side streets in the rear of the building. Tim?
It's not eligible for adoption until June 14th, so it's best to leave that alone until then.
Thank you so much for clarification.
Okay. All right. Anything else for public discussion this evening by any member of council or the administration that we need to touch on here quickly? 7 minutes to 7, we're going to go into a brief executive session. If there are no other topics, I'm going to ask Linda to prepare the room, cut off a live.
Did you want Chief, since we're going to be talking about the FOP contract and the AFSCME contract, did you want Chief Tornelli and Stan and Charlie to stay in as well?
Yeah, if it's appropriate. Yeah, and Jamar. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.